Welcome back to another episode of Politics Unfiltered. It's Monday, so you know what it is, a brand new episode. To those of you who are joining us for the first time, make sure you like, subscribe, share this episode. We have some real catching up to do. I didn't release an episode last week, so we've got some catching up to do. A lot has happened from Jimmy Kimmel to James Comey to what's happening in Portland and an attack on free speech. And then right here in my hometown where we're recording this episode at, the National Guard has been deployed here, and we're going to follow up on that conversation. But I know that you all probably get tired of just listening to me, and this podcast wasn't designed to just be about me or about me interviewing people. I have a lot of very interesting conversations with the people around me, and one of my friends is here with me on this podcast today. Reverend Dr. Thurston Smith. My friend Thurston Smith is here. And Thurston, he and I have some really deep conversations. I mean, this man has a track record of being a go-to person on the local level, the state level, the federal level. He's been a part of some huge initiatives across the country. He has a ton of credentials. He served on a number of boards. I mean, he is just a good person to have in your Rolodex to call up and say, "Hey, Thurston, let me run something by you." So yeah. I figured that, instead of me and him just being on the phone, we'd have a conversation and catch up on the craziness and the madness that's been going on in politics. We turn the cameras on and the mics on and go at it. Thurston.
All right.
Welcome to the show, man.
Good to see you.
I'm glad I could finally get you on here.
Nice to be back in the Oval.
You see what I've done with the mini oval? I've tried to replicate it. It's a lot different from all the gold around Trump's oval, but it gives us something.
Good stuff.
I want to give the listeners of this episode just a glimpse of some of the deep conversations that we have about some of the issues that we're facing in the country, because a lot of times people need to hear that they're not alone. They're not crazy for thinking what they think. We're not the QAnon conspiracy theorists, but we do try to look at what's happening and try to make some logical assessments on if we're in the twilight zone or not, or if we're headed down a dark path towards authoritarianism or dictatorship. So we got some bases to cover in this episode.
Yeah, we do, and a number of topics. America's at a pivotal turning point.
Well, let me say this.
Yeah.
Let's start right here at home in Memphis. And I know you've adopted Memphis as home by way of South Carolina.
17 years.
But you're originally from Brooklyn, New York. So tell the listeners how you go from Brooklyn to Memphis.
18 years in New York City. Moved to South Carolina, Charleston, at age 18. Stayed in Charleston, South Carolina. That's where everything for me began. Service in military, service in government, career in mental health. First college I attended was in South Carolina. Ministry, my introduction to politics. First political appointment was in South Carolina by South Carolina Governor Jim Hyde. Left South Carolina, went to work for the Justice Department, Court Services and Offender Supervision Agency in Washington, D.C. Left D.C., went to Birmingham, back to the Department of Veterans Affairs, and from Department of Veterans Affairs in Birmingham, which is in Jefferson County, Alabama, to Memphis in August of 2008. I've been in Memphis for now 17 years, 1 month, 17 days.
And you came
17 days.
You got it down to the date. You came to Memphis with the federal.
I came on a federal promotion.
Right. Federal promotion. Well, you was working at the
VA.
The VA.
You've
retired.
Department of Veterans. Correct.
Retired from the So if anybody at the White House is listening to this podcast, they can't fire you tomorrow. After this airs. You've retired. Let me ask you.
But be careful. They knowing this administration, they might try to
come for your benefit. Come for your benefit or anything.
Yeah, watch that.
let me. When you were in South Carolina, did you ever get a chance to interface with Representative Clyburn at all?
Well, of course.
Did you
I lived in his district.
Magic? I mean, I've been around.
I lived in Jim's district.
Was it as great as everybody?
Listen, Congressman Jim Clyburn has earned the reputation of kingmaker, and that wasn't a name that he gave himself, but he's earned that reputation because he's mentored quite a few of South Carolina's most prominent public and political leaders, and you know most of them, and he's a strong man of integrity, but he's fantastic,
a true kingmaker,
great man.
So let's say,
and chairman of the House Faith Caucus,
and he's touched a lot of great people, including you. So let me say, we have let's talk about here in Memphis. That's home to both of us. The National Guard has been deployed, activated by the governor, requested by the president, and by the time this episode airs, I mean, they could very well be outside of this office in downtown Memphis, where there is a homeless population. Right. Do you think? I mean, because you're a veteran. You mean you've worked with veterans, you've served. You got a son that's in the military.
I've got a son that just retired from the Air Force and is now reemployed with the Department. Well, I was getting ready to say the Department of Defense, the Department of War. Something every day, something is changing out of Washington.
But you're a veteran.
I am
veterans.
And I served in the Army National Guard.
Yeah. So do you think that it is appropriate? And both of you and I know that there's a crime problem in Memphis. I mean, we're not oblivious to the fact that there is a real crime problem here.
Right.
But you served in the National Guard. Do you think? I don't think it warrants it, but do you think it warrants actually having National Guard troops on the ground in the city? I think the mayors have both said that the city mayor said he didn't request them. The county mayor is absolutely against them. Do you think it warrants it?
Absolutely not. We don't use the National Guard for all of these mass shootings that we have every year.
Yeah.
We don't. Do you understand? There's a number of reasons why the use of the Army National Guard to fight crime in Memphis or any other city in the United States is counterintuitive. Number one, the Army National Guard is not trained. The training platform is not to be law enforcement officials on any level. Number two, we've had, and you're aware of this, we've had a number of leaders, elected and appointed, both our mayors, Mayor Paul Young and Mayor Lee Harris on the county level, as well as a number of state legislators, have been asking the government for resources that will directly prevent, in some instances, and mitigate crime in Memphis, such as funding for special programs and projects, funding for housing, infrastructure development, other economic development issues, and there's been no response relating to that. It was this governor a couple of years ago that signed an executive action that allowed for permitless carry. You and I have had our foresight. We saw this coming.
Yeah,
and it was almost, when you look at. See, this is when I tell folks, even when it comes to racism, if you ever want to know if something is correct or not, if you ever want to know if something was put together with good intent versus evil intent, all you need to do is look at the outcome.
Yeah.
All you need to do is look at the results. We saw this coming.
Because you can have, in my opinion, if you live out in a rural part of the state where folks are just out in the woods and on their property shooting, you could have, permitless carry because they're already carrying weapons anyway. But when you come into the inner cities, I mean, that's a different dynamic. It's a much different dynamic. Regardless, there should be some type of permit requirement. But when you turn people loose in inner cities where there's already crime, where there's already violence, and now you're saying you can walk, because sometimes I'm in the gas stations and everybody's got their firearm on them. So no matter who's here, the National Guard or the FBI or DEA or
you
ATF,
don't allow citizens to drive a vehicle without a permit. Now
without insurance.
Now this governor's not a dumb man.
Yeah.
See. Let me tell you. I have been involved in government and public policy and community affairs, civic affairs for over 30 years, and actually. And I'm sure you would agree with this, Hendrell. Once you're involved in a body of work, you develop a couple of skills, a little bit of expertise in a particular area. You develop some wisdom, some discernment, and you're able to foresee what's going to happen as a result of certain policy action. Why would you allow, we talked about this years ago, why would you allow citizens to carry a firearm without a permit? You don't let them drive without permit. I had to go get a fishing permit a couple of weeks ago to just to get some freshwater brim. Do you understand what I'm saying? But you're going to allow people to carry a weapon without a permit, and this is the result of that. So that's one reason. The Army National Guard is the United States Army's primary combat force. There are approximately 370,000 Army National Guardsmen in the United States and approximately 210 to 215,000 Army Reserve.
So when we hear people saying this is just the National Guard, these are toy soldiers,
there's
trying to act like these are toy soldiers.
The United. Let me explain for the audience, benefit of the audience, so they'll be informed. The Army National Guard is the active duty U.S. Army's primary combat force. The Army Reserve, if we were at war, the Army Reserve is primary support, transportation, and ancillary services. Your Army National Guard, if we went to war, the Army National Guard would be attached to active duty military units.
So if they're
and both reserve components make up approximately 65% of the U.S. Army's total combat readiness.
So if there was an active military engagement while these troops are on the ground in Memphis, the likelihood of them being called into action, their units being called into action, is likely if there's a military conflict on the ground somewhere in the world.
Oh, absolutely. The Persian Gulf War, Operation Enduring Freedom, Operation Iraqi Freedom, Operation New Dawn. Operation Iraqi Freedom was under first Bush. Operation Enduring Freedom, I believe it was under second Bush. Operation New Dawn was under President Obama. Army National Guard were activated for all of those, and they are active duty Army.
I know you probably I know you probably heard this, but I'm gonna play this. I'm gonna play a clip from the press conference.
Okay,
where the governor is saying that yes, these troops will be here, but there will be I think he used the word force multiplier for the Memphis Police Department and the county sheriff.
Right,
department.
And that term force multiplier is, and in fact, that term is used both in the military infrastructure as well as in law enforcement, and it's a fancy way of saying they are going to be used in addition to force multiplier.
So let me play this clip from the press conference, because he's saying that they're not going to carry weapons unless the Memphis Police Department or the county sheriff's department requests them. Let me play this clip. This is what the governor said about the National Guard and kind of what their role would be.
Sure.
Let's listen to this.
What was your other question?
The other question, I guess, is will they be armed, and will the Guard be making arrests here? Since the role.
Yeah. So the Guard will not be making arrests, and the Guard will not be armed except and unless the local law enforcement makes requests for that. So this is mission dependent.
All right. So you bring National Guard troops to a city.
Right.
You bring the Humvees in. What do you bring them in? Just to stand around and twiddle their fingers? I mean, they're not going to be carrying weapons. They're not going to be arresting people, according to the governor. So have you ever been to? Let me first ask this: have you ever been deployed?
I've been activated.
You've been activated.
I was activated in South Carolina during Hurricane Hugo.
Did y'all carry weapons?
Which was devastating. Yeah, we had weapons. We had weapons.
What'd y'all carry? Y'all sidearms?
Some had their 45s, and that's what was issued when I was in. But the rest of us had our AR-15.
Wow.
Had our M16.
And that was just for looting doing
that. That is correct. And we worked in tandem with the city of Charleston Police Department.
Wow. So you don't buy it when the governor say these troops won't carry guns because we saw it in D.C. They started out they didn't have weapons in the beginning in D.C. Just like they won't have weapons in the beginning here, but eventually they ended up with long guns.
Well, here's number one: we never go anywhere, even on training. When 1 week in a month, when we went to Fort Jackson in South Carolina, or Fort Stewart, Georgia, or Fort Gordon, which is also in Georgia, for training or 2 to 3 weeks annual training, we always traveled with our weapons.
Yeah.
Did it mean that we carried our weapons with us everywhere we went? No. When I was activated in the Guard many years ago, we had our weapons with us all the time, 24/7. Never left our side until that action was over. Now, if the governor said that they won't be carrying weapons, well,
take him at his word.
Yeah, but that's kind of normally, yeah,
it's not the normal,
right?
All right,
but this is, you have to look at this from a broader policy perspective, and which goes back to the foundation of your question earlier. They're not needed for policing here. We've got enough, right? You've got the FBI that's already been deployed. Well, the FBI is here, right? We got a FBI station there, but extra FBI agents have been deployed here. Extra U.S. Marshals have been deployed here. We've got the Tennessee State Highway Patrol here.
They're saying DA, ICE.
Why, if you got all of these other see, that's the other thing. If you have all of these other law enforcement, right? See the role? Law enforcement entities, that's further rationale for why you don't need the Army National Guard.
Look, see, the governor said in that press conference, he said he's not declaring a state of emergency. He's just signing the request that came from the president for these.
Well, it's kind of interesting, the request from the president. So the National Guard is activated under one or two U.S. federal codes. U.S. Federal Code 32, which is normally the Army National Guard is activated for either civil disturbance, natural disasters like the one that I was activated in the state of South Carolina many years ago. Then you have U.S. Code 10, which is typically the code that the President of the United States activates the Army National Guard, and that's almost always associated with a need, with a mission relating to national defense or national security. This is not a national security issue, but yet the action is being influenced by the president. So I'm actually not quite sure under which code they're being activated. In other words, meaning who's authorized. We know the president wants them here, but is the president sending them here, or is Governor Lee sending them here? Because the president asked him to. So if Governor Lee is bringing them here, then it's USC 32.
And then
if President Trump, the president of the United States is activating them, then it's USC 10. Yeah.
Because in the beginning, we know the governor was saying that he didn't think they were needed, and then all this pressure came down from the White House, and all of a sudden he changed his tune. Yeah. Let me because I know you don't think that they should be here. I don't think that they should be here. I think a lot of people across the city don't believe they should be here, but there are people who in the city who believe that they are the force that can help reduce crime. When I hear people say that, I try to put another thought in their mind.
Right.
I try to say, because we know this is not a compassionate president. This man really don't care about crime. Crime in a majority.
Well, if he cared about crime, how many January 6th did he?
Every one of them.
How many was that?
116. Was it 15 or 1600? It was.
No, pardon me. Right.
Yeah, it was over 1,000.
It was 4 digits.
Yeah. So he doesn't care about crime. I think that there's a deeper, more sinister plot into all of this, because if you put these troops on the ground in Memphis or Chicago or Washington, D.C., or any of these majority black cities that he is trying to deploy them to,
right.
Imagine if one of these troops hurt a civilian, kill a civilian.
Or vice versa.
If one of these, if a civilian even attempts to harm one of these troops, the amount of hell that's going to break loose with protests in a city, with protests across the nation, and then it gives the president the authority to say, well, let me go and restore order across the country.
Through martial law.
I'm going to put troops everywhere.
And this is the precursor to martial law.
And I don't think a lot of people see it that way.
Which is conflictual with the Posse Comitatus Act.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely.
Do you say?
But
you don't use your own, and it's such a not only is, but there's been a constitutional crisis ever since he's gotten in office from the first time. Every day is a constitutional crisis. But every day, meaning that there are broad conflicts in policy ethics.
But you
don't deploy troops of a community or of a nation against. You don't use troops against your own people.
But to be
now we haven't gotten to that point. But I just wanted to.
To be fair, and you said there was a constitutional crisis every day. But to be fair, during that first term, there was some folks around him who was at least keeping him in check a little bit.
A little bit.
This time around,
no such dynamic.
This guy's come in with a strategy. I mean, he is showing the pressure points in the U.S. Constitution at every turn. I mean, if there's a crack or a loophole in that Constitution, the Supreme Court is siding with him time again. I mean, and that's just
it's unprecedented.
It's insane. When I hear people say that I'm okay with troops coming here, I say, okay, good. But think about it from this perspective, not just a crime perspective. Because if they're not carrying weapons, if they're not arresting people,
right,
then what are they going to be doing? Doing what they had to do in D.C. Mowing lawns and picking up trash and busting down homeless encampments and hurling homeless people away, because that's essentially what they ended up doing in D.C. But the problem with that in Memphis is that this is state land, this is city land, this isn't federal land, this isn't D.C.
Correct.
So when I hear people say that, I have to remind them that think about this from another perspective.
Right.
If this happened,
and let me share this with you. I'm glad that you mentioned this. D.C. was the proving ground for them coming here. But here's the other thing. The Army National Guard rests directly under the President of the United States in D.C. because the District of Columbia is a federal territory.
Yep.
Look that up.
Yeah.
The Army National Guard, the D.C. Army National Guard, their direct commander-in-chief is the President of the United States.
The Constitution specifies, or federal law specifies, that they could only be there 30 days before Congress has to extend it. But in a state, when you have the governor saying, no, it's a different ballgame.
Right, but here's the thing that you need to know, and all commanders of these units understand this. If you have a disturbance in Memphis, or let's go back to D.C. If you have a disturbance in D.C., you don't use the D.C. Army National Guard to address that. You get the Virginia Army National Guard to come in, or the Maryland Army National Guard, or the New Jersey Army, because the guard members if you deploy the same guard members from the same community, they're going to be interacting with the friends.
Yeah. And I think some of the Tennessee Guard went up to D.C.
Exactly.
But the governor said, Tennessee Guardsmen are coming to Memphis. So they're going to be guardsmen from the state activated inside of the state.
Right.
So that's the dynamic we face.
Yeah,
I mean,
they're probably from.
But we see, and to the point you were just making.
Right.
But we see this, Thurston. I think a lot of this that we're seeing, and they're using violence and they're using crime as like the precursor to everything in these opening days. Let's take, for instance, Charlie Kirk. Listen, I've said on the podcast, I think that a 31-year-old man tragically losing his life in a very public way, that he lost his life because of free speech, should never be tolerated in this country. I couldn't stand the stuff he said.
Absolutely.
I absolutely could not. I don't agree with anything that he was spewing besides releasing the Epstein files,
exactly.
of course. But I didn't agree with anything he stood for.
Right.
But somehow the president and the folks in his administration, or he's forcing the folks in his administration to capitalize on this moment to continue to talk about violence, continue to talk about these left lunatics as, that's violent, extremists.
Right. When he wasn't shot by a left lunatic.
Well, everything
and then six historically black colleges and universities got bomb threats and had to close.
Wow.
Subsequent to that, what did black folks have to do with his death?
And you were talking, and you brought up what happened at now these pop-up groups, what they call themselves, the great debaters, or the council of debaters, these young guys who are born out of this Charlie Kirk movement, they're popping up on the campuses, antagonizing at HBCUs.
Right.
I mean, they were on the campus of
TSU.
Telling me of TSU
last week,
and they're acting like they didn't know that was an HBCU. Which is, I mean, strange.
That's
deliberate. It's deliberate. I know, but
they knew where they.
But to the point that you were making,
you don't go set up a booth with propaganda just anywhere.
If you're listening to this podcast, you might want to look up protests on debate on TSU campus, or debate
Tennessee State University.
Kicked off of Tennessee State University's campus.
Right.
If you're watching this podcast on YouTube, here's a snippet or photo of what that looked like. But Thurston, you made a point earlier about this president and a willingness to use force against the American people. I mean, just today, we're filming this podcast, and this morning, the president put something out on Truth Social, directing the Secretary of the Department of Defense, the Department of War,
right,
Pete Hegseth,
right,
to deploy troops, to Portland, Oregon.
Mm-hmm.
To use full force. And we know what full force means.
Right.
That means deadly force. Right. To use full force against Americans protesting outside of ICE facilities. And the same thing we hear coming from Pam Bundy. Listen to this. This is the Attorney General.
Mm-hmm.
This is Attorney General releasing this video. And we know just last week, the president went on that long tirade demanding that she, do something about his political enemies, do something about his rivals, the people that he hates. And he was giving her strict instructions that the time was now. You can't wait any longer.
Uh-huh.
But listen to her talking about deploying federal forces to go after what she called liberal or left lunatics or extremists. Listen to this.
We're witnessing a new era of political violence. Assassins have tried to murder President Trump twice and tried to kill Supreme Court Justice Kavanaugh. In Minnesota, legislators and even children attending Mass were gunned down in cold blood in 2 separate incidents. And an assassin targeted and murdered our friend Charlie Kirk. A sniper shot 3 people at a Texas ICE facility, and now more than 200 violent rioters were at a Chicago ICE facility chanting, "Arrest ICE, shoot ICE," At least one had a gun. We've seen this before. We saw it in Portland and with the LA riots. These are not peaceful protests. These are coordinated attacks by radical extremists, and they end now. Anyone who threatens or assaults our federal officers will be arrested and charged federally, not in some liberal state court. Same goes for anyone who's funding and aiding these extremists. You will be dismantled brick by brick. We are taking our country back. Make America safe again.
I mean, I don't know about you, but to me, I can read between the lines.
Well, sure.
I can read between the lines. When obviously, yes, we don't want anybody terrorizing our streets. We don't want any domestic terrorists terrorizing our streets. The same way we don't want the same way we don't want them terrorizing our little children inside of schools.
Correct.
The same way we don't want them carrying tiki torches in the streets
of Virginia,
or jumping out the back of U-Hauls in places like Nashville, Tennessee.
Correct.
So when she's talking about domestic terrorists, but trying to say these are just left groups, I mean, to me, she's carrying out the wishes of the president, and thus turning federal law enforcement and federal troops
against their own people,
against the American people.
Right. Yeah.
And people are sitting back, and they're just like, oh, well. I mean, the people in power, because there's folks like us who are out here really talking about this, who are really sharing this information,
mm-hmm.
and who's trying to enlighten people on what's happening,
right,
and the possibilities and the prospects. But we have people in Congress, people in the United States Senate,
right,
people who work in this administration are just sitting back like, oh, well.
Here is something that Congressman Clyburn, I believe, posted earlier today. And the congressman says, Trump seems to spend a lot of time plotting baseless investigations into people who have held him accountable. That means time not spent bringing down costs, time not spent building more housing, and time not spent creating good jobs. Lastly, the congressman says, he's more focused on his grievances than fighting for the American people, unquote.
Listen.
That was from Congressman James Clyburn.
I remember 2024 and Kamala Harris out there on the campaign trail. And she is warning people
prophetically
that this man was going to be
blow.
Yeah, that he was going to be more concerned about going after
his enemies.
And you had newspapers writing headlines like, Kamala Harris doesn't know this. Where's her proof?
Right.
I mean, she was right.
Here's your proof.
I mean, we're seeing it in real time. Unfortunately, having to live through it.
But this stuff is severe.
Let me ask you this.
Yeah.
Let me ask you this because the folks in this country, the American citizens.
Right.
I mean, it seems like everybody is just in a different state, a different mindset when it comes to this guy. And there are a lot of people who are afraid. There are a lot of people who are complacent. You've studied psychology. You've studied psychology. You've studied theological studies. Is there anywhere, think about the psyche of this man, the president of the United States. Is there anything that you see that says there's something wrong? Because I know, there are people out here every day talking about Biden's old, Biden's not fit, he's out of it, he can't remember things. But do you look at the psyche of this president?
And that's interesting. It's interesting how people with no background, many of them, right? Most of them with no background, no background in health and human services, no background with diagnosing Biden.
Yeah.
I find that to be incredibly interesting.
But where'd they
go?
But
I'm going to use.
Hold on before you go into
ahead.
it. My big question is, where are you? Those same folks. Where are you? If you're listening to the podcast, you know some of these folks. Where are they? Why aren't they on the news diagnosing this guy? Because I think there's something wrong. Maybe I'm wrong. Am I wrong? Is there something? Is this guy okay? Is there something wrong with him?
In our field, when we conduct assessments on patients or clients, and most agencies, because of the nature of psychology and the nature of interacting with human beings, we're often encouraged to write, "It appears," right? Here's what's so interesting.
You got to start with "it appears."
Here's what's so interesting regarding what we're experiencing at the pen of this man on Pennsylvania Avenue. Is no matter how I look at it, no matter how you look at it, if you look at it from a theological perspective, it begins and ends the same way. If you look at it from a psychological perspective, it begins and ends the same way. If you look at it from a socio-political perspective, it begins and ends the same way. And I'll explain further. If you ever want to know if something is good, if something versus something is evil, if you ever want to know if the right ingredients went into creating something or versus the bad ingredients, all you need to do is look at the outcome, look at the result. Even the Bible says, even God says there's 6 things that God hates and 7 are an abomination to him. I'll give them to you. Haughty eyes, a lying tongue, hands that shed innocent blood, a heart that devises wicked plans, feet that are swift to run to evil, a false witness that spews lies, and last but not least, the 7th one that God finds an abomination is a person that stirs up conflict in the community. That's theology.
So when we talk about the president, is like check.
Let me give you some psychology. There are 11 diagnostic criteria for narcissistic personality disorder within the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual for Mental Disorders. An individual must meet 5 out of the 11 criteria, but there are 11 criteria. There are 7 diagnostic criteria for antisocial personality disorder, and an individual must meet 3 out of 7. Those 2 diagnoses are the medical fields or the clinical fields, clinical definition of criminality, sociopathy, psychopathy. And one of the fundamental traits that links both antisocial personality disorder and narcissistic personality disorder is a total disregard and lack of empathy for others. Thus, they can do whatever they do and don't give a rat's
beep,
right, on how what they do impacts other people. That's trait number 1. Trait number 2 is an excessive and over-exaggerated sense of self-importance.
Yeah.
Does that sound?
I'm the greatest. No one.
Does that sound?
Well, hold on a second.
Does that sound about right?
Hold on before you continue. Let me show you what he means by that. Let me play this clip.
Can do it like me. Nobody can do it like me. Honestly.
Nobody's stronger than me.
Nobody has better toys than I do.
There's nobody bigger or better at the military than I am.
Nobody loves the Bible more than I do.
Nobody builds walls better than me.
Nobody's better to people with disabilities than me.
Nobody's fighting for the veterans like I'm fighting for the veterans.
Nobody that's done so much for equality as I have.
There's nobody more pro-Israel than I am.
There's nobody more conservative than me.
There is nobody that respects women more than I do. Nobody would be tougher on ISIS than Donald Trump.
Because nobody's ever had crowds like Trump has had.
There's nobody that understands the horror of nuclear better than me. And nobody even understands it but me. It's called devaluation, the sale of the uranium that nobody knows what it means. I know what it means.
Nobody knows more about trade than me.
Nobody knows the game better than I do.
Nobody's in the history of this country has ever known so much about infrastructure as Donald Trump. I know the H-1B. I know the H-2B. Nobody knows it better than me.
Nobody knows politicians better than I do.
Nobody knows more about taxes than I do. Nobody knows more about debt.
Nobody knows the system better than me. Which is why I alone can fix it.
All right. Okay. So that's the second one. Go ahead.
All right. Now let me give you the socio-political perspective. public policy is crafted or driven by one of three ways: either ideology, either research, or either public demand. I'll give you an example of all three. Let's just say there's been a repeated traffic accidents on the corner of Main Street and one of the other adjacent streets. And the community neighborhood association has gotten so fed up with these constant wrecks at that particular corner that they raise enough hell that with city council and the mayor, that finally city council and mayor pass a joint resolution to put a street light there. Yeah. That's an example of how public demand influences public policy. Yeah. Let me give you the research perspective. When individuals, let's just say there's elderly people are dying at an alarming rate, and nobody understands why. And so we get some researchers from the National Institute of Health to conduct a year-long or 2-3 year-long research on that matter, and they've come to find out that it's because of X, Y, and Z. And thus, the researchers submit their recommendation to policymakers, and a law is passed on behalf of seniors via that research. That's how research influences public policy. Yeah. And then you have what we experience now. Never in history, at least not in my lifetime, have we seen constant policy actions not made on public demand, not even made on the basis of credible and viable research, but simply made because it's their opinion. This Tylenol with God. The autism.
Listen.
Autism spectrum disorder, which is a developmental disability, predominantly experienced by children. Children had autism before autism existed, before Tylenol was even created.
The first case of autism was identified before the first pill of Tylenol was taken.
Exactly.
But the scary part, let me say this before you continue. The scary part about that is that when you have the president standing there giving medical advice, and he starts to say, based on my opinion, I think, man, you have no medical basis.
But here's what makes it bad. This is the same guy that told us during COVID to just shoot bleach and inject bleach.
He wanted bleach can take.
You remember that?
Yeah, can you put?
Do you understand? But this is what makes it bad. This administration has fired most of, if not most of their, and I know some of these people that work at these federal agencies for the government, particularly within the health and human services space. He has fired most of his top researchers. Then even if he didn't, it's apparent they don't use them.
Because they don't want to go along with Robert, with him and Bobby. And look, listen.
Yeah.
I feel sorry for the Kennedy family. I feel sorry for that name, that he has that name, because I mean, whatever has him talking the way that he talks, whatever medical thing that he has gone through, I mean, it has truly sent him into bunkers land. It's like the Twilight Zone when it comes to public health. It's like the Twilight Zone. These people don't care about research, and when people need to know this about that Tylenol thing. When this guy took office, or when he was appointed, he had given this date. By this date in September, I'm going to come out and we're going to know exactly what's causing autism. And this wasn't about really finding the culprit, because they hadn't found the culprit of the cause of autism. This was about him meeting that deadline and being able to come out and say on that date that here's what we think it is. Not any medical logic behind it. Just based on the president's opinion.
No different than when he first got in office. Very similar. When he first got in office, had all these, the helicopter and the plane crash. That was caused by DEI when the pilots both were white. Do you remember that?
It's caused by DEI.
But not so scary. every decision that they make, every major decision that they make seems to be, impulsive, number one. Number two, not founded, not merited on anything credible. Just like the deployment of the National Guard. We are seeing it seems like all of his policy actions, all of the policy actions coming out of DC are made at a whim. They're not well thought out.
Yeah, based on what the president wants.
They're not merited. It's very impulsive, and that's dangerous.
It's happening just because the president has asked for it. I mean, here's a man who they say don't read national security briefings. Don't read memos. Only thing he does is from sources inside of his own White House. Only thing he does is sit around and consume the news. That's all he really does. He's not really consuming anything that would help guide him to making rational decisions. And that's extremely dangerous. When you're not just leading this country, you're leading the entire world.
But
the leader of the free world.
But here's the thing. The first administration, and you referenced this, Hendrell, the first administration, he had some rational people.
Yeah. Who was at least willing, what did they say? That
and it's not that they were friends of liberals, but he had a few rational people in the Department of Defense, in his cabinet, that said,
hold on, you're pushing us too far.
Do you understand? But it doesn't seem to be nobody there that meets that criteria.
The guardrails are off. I mean, there's nobody watching the toddler in the daycare. He is running around the White House. He's running around the world, and he's causing absolute chaos. Imagine leaving your 3-year-old at home and the disaster that the house will be when you return to it. I mean, that's what we're facing. And after this administration is over, I'd like to be hopeful. And I'd like to hope that there's going to be a drastic positive change. But I believe that once this administration is over, we're not just going to be trying to pass legislation to correct what he's undone or to try to codify what the Supreme Court has discarded. I think we are going to be in Reconstruction 2.0. I think the country is actually going to be in a reconstruction period because there is so much that he is destroying in just 8 months. Imagine what the next 3.5 years will be like if we continue down this path. They will shred every single thing in this country. They'll shred every single thing in this country, including the Constitution. I mean, they talk about make America great again. It's almost like they're trying to make something great. But if we're not careful, and I saw somebody tweet this, if we're not careful, at the end, that word Bill Maher, at the end, that word America is not going to be there. You'll be making Trump great again, but at the end, that word America is not going to be there if we continue rolling down the path that we're on. I mean, they are discarding constitutional freedoms left or right. Let's take Jimmy Kimmel, for instance. I mean, and this is a good example of someone going out there doing the president's dirty work. This FCC chair, Brendan Carr, going out there doing the president's dirty work because he signaled that he wanted Kimmel off the air. So you have Carr go out there and press Nexstar and Sinclair and ABC on getting Kimmel off the air. And they see that the populace was able to rise up, start canceling their Disney subscriptions, start canceling their Hulu subscriptions, start canceling their ESPN subscriptions to put that pressure on Disney to bring him back. But if we allow Brendan Carr and the president to do that to someone like Jimmy Kimmel or Stephen Colbert, or because he's calling for Fallon and the women at The View, he's calling for Jon Stewart, he's calling for these folks to be taken off the air too. Once they're off the air, then what does he start next? I don't want YouTube airing that podcast.
Do you know what country operates like this?
I know.
Russia.
I know.
Do your viewers know that? Do you know they have Russia
if you're
has
listening,
total control
if you're listening
over the
to
media.
if you're listening to the podcast,
Yeah.
and I've mentioned this in an episode before,
Right.
but if you listen to the podcast, we talked about the steps that these folks take to authoritarianism and dictatorship, and this is one of them. They take control of the media. They want control of the narrative.
Correct.
Go ahead, Thurston.
Absolutely. The irony in that, they instill fear, control, suppression, oppression, and give you the impression that you have rights. The culture and
that
climate,
they're the savior.
No, but listen, I don't know if you feel it. The culture and climate of America has changed.
Yeah, I mean, when you
in
say
a relatively short period of time.
8 months.
Right.
When you say that they make you feel like they're giving you rights.
Right.
Think about what he's saying.
It's deceptive.
Yes. Think about what he's saying about places like Chicago and Memphis and Washington, D.C. Only I can save you. I'm the only one who can save you. I'm the only one who can help you.
Right.
I mean, that's nuts to me. But the saddest part is that we have American citizens who are so informed about the game that this man is playing that they are walking right into this trap. Or maybe not. Maybe there's folks out there who are actually waking up. They want to admit it. But maybe folks are waking up to say, something's not right.
I don't know where they're at. And that's the thing that concerns me the most, Hendrell. It's not what's going on, but rather people's response to what's going on. Meaning that it's like people are either severe cognitive dissonance or a profound state of denial.
Yeah.
Because it's getting progressively worse.
And either one of those could be like rolling out the red carpet for a dictator. Either one.
Well, he's already
either one, or putting on a red hat for a dictator. However you want to classify it, but I think we're in a very, very, very pivotal moment in this country.
Right.
And really, because the Supreme Court Supreme Court is rubber stamping anything that he's done with these executive orders. They're rubber stamping it. The folks in Congress, they're on vacation right now. They're
talking about a government shutdown.
Yeah, there's a government shutdown looming, and they're on vacation. They're tanning.
Right.
Still getting their government benefits.
Right.
Asking for $1 billion+ for their own personal security.
Correct.
And we're on the cusp of a government shutdown.
Right.
And these are the folks who were promising to regain control of government.
Right.
Bring prices down.
Right.
Bring healthcare
Bring the
costs
price
down.
of eggs down.
I mean, they were promising all these things, but now we're facing inflation is up.
Correct.
We're facing a government shutdown. And
deficit up.
Deficit's up.
Skyrocket.
And and the president is marching us towards dictatorship. He's challenging and trying to strip people of their rights every day, and they're on vacation.
Right.
They're on their vacation. And when the story is written, when the story is written about when this man put America through his roughest stress test,
the
darkest times in the stress test of its democracy,
right.
I think there's going to be a passage in there about how the people who were supposed to be the checks on this guy checked out.
Right.
They checked out. They're letting him do whatever he wants. The only way, in my opinion, that we even begin to press the brakes is that in November of 2026, Democrats take control of either the Senate or the House.
Right.
If for any reason that doesn't happen, we're in trouble. The country's in trouble.
Very much so. And we're no longer democracy. Right?
Man,
I hate to say that. With all of the elements that are occurring, I don't care what's written on paper. Everything that we're experiencing now, from the time since he's been back in there, has all been contrary to, counterintuitive, and counterproductive of the principles of democracy.
To the party that's the grand old party. The party
that love the Constitution.
Yeah, the party that,
and the First Amendment.
Yeah, the party that prides itself on loving the Constitution.
And the rights of speech.
And rights. I mean, folks.
Right.
Thurston, I'm glad.
Yeah, man.
I'm glad you came by.
You know, we can talk about this all day long.
I'm glad you came by. Listen, I hope, I know y'all are following the podcast. If you're out there, I know you're following the podcast. If you enjoyed the conversation, you should also make sure you follow Thurston on social media. Thurston, you're on social media as Thurston Smith, right?
I am. Yeah.
So he's on social media as Thurston Smith. Follow him on Facebook and Instagram and all these places. I'm going to have you back at some point so we can talk some more. But to those of you who are out there, I hope you learned something from this conversation. If you have some questions, don't hesitate to drop them in the comments, shoot me an email. As always, we cannot allow our power to be stripped away from us. If you're listening to this podcast and you're trying to figure out what you can do to make a difference in this country, obviously, I want you to subscribe so we can keep giving you helpful tips. Mm-hmm. But I want you to remember that you need to keep asking the tough questions. You need to keep holding people accountable. You need to keep inquiring about what's rational and what's irrational. And you need to be willing to be a force of resistance, whether it's at the local level, the state level, or the federal level. Thank y'all for tuning in. This has been another episode of Politics Unfiltered, and I'm out.